just joined us, co-host of today's 316 Future.Bible Summit, DJ Chuang is with me, and we've been cohorts, partners in crime over this last year. We started a podcast called the Future.Bible Podcast. Hopefully you've heard about it. If you haven't, we hope that you go to iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher Radio, wherever you get your audio, and check out Season 1. We just kicked off Season 2, so you can catch up with us pretty quickly for this season as well. And that evolved into today's summit in particular. And the whole point of today is to highlight and surface up people that are on the forefront of innovation where it comes to thinking about Bible, the scriptures, and engagement. One of the things that we've brought here today is a speaker that's going to talk about a topic that you probably haven't thought about or heard about that often. It's called transhumanism. What does transhumanism have to do with the Bible? And that's what Micah Redding is here to talk about today. It's pretty exciting. It's probably going to be a conversation starter, whatever room that you're in. So sit back and relax and enjoy this talk. But before we get to Micah, I just want to flag one thing in particular. If you wanted to take this talk and review it later or share it with a friend or team member or peer, you can do that because after this summit, the videos are going to go away. But on our website, the website address is 316.future.bible, 316.future.bible. You have the details and information how you can claim your own all-access pass to the on-demand library of all of our speaker videos that we're presenting here today. So if you get the on-demand pass, you're going to be able to review all of these videos at your leisure with your team, with your peers, or even by yourself, maybe while you're traveling or you have some downtime. That is all available to you at the website, 316.future.bible. And one of the things that American Bible Society is doing with every single on-demand pass that you pick up, they're going to give you a voucher code that you can redeem for your own free one-year registration of a .bible domain name. So you can search the .bible domain registry, get any general availability name that's available, and you can register it free for your own purposes to light up a website. And this might be the time to start your own little venture project, blog, or something related to Bible and the scriptures. So find out more details at 316.future.bible. With that, let's get straight to this next talk. I am sure you're going to be on the edge of your seat listening the entire time. Micah Redding is next, and let's get right to his talk.
My name is DJ Chuang, and I am delighted to welcome to the Future.Bible 316 online summit, Micah Redding. And he is the executive director of the Christian Transhumanism Association, which is a pretty fancy title. And we're going to spend the next 20 minutes or so that we have together to unpack that and hear what that means as we have this summit and this podcast conversation around the intersection of Bible and technology. Micah, welcome.
Well, thanks so much. Yeah, it's great to be here. And this is a really important conversation to have. It's really important for Christians to engage in. So I'm thrilled to be able to help participate in that.
Yeah, in the circles I've run in for the past 10, 20 years or so as a pastor and a resource to church leaders, I hadn't come across transhumanism until recently. So can you succinctly describe, I know it's a huge topic, but what is transhumanism and how does one become a transhumanist?
Yeah, absolutely. So transhumanism, the easiest way to understand it is just that it's a worldwide movement to use science and technology to transform the human condition in some way. And so that movement to use science and technology to transform the human condition, and we can talk about that because a lot of people we'll look at that and say, okay, what does that mean? What does that entail? And it can mean everything from genetic engineering to AI to radical new prosthetics to nanotechnology, atomic level manufacturing, all kinds of stuff. So you become a transhumanist by simply saying that you are, right? Like you join the movement by identifying with that. But what a lot of people say, well, don't we all want to do that, right? Don't we all want to use science and technology to transform the human condition? And I think the answer is pretty much yes. That's what humans do. What makes transhumanism distinct as a movement is how far they take it and that they have a plan. And so we can talk more about what that looks like. But yeah, that's the basic.
Yeah. Well, it's a huge, huge conversation. And the other term that I have come across that's kind of in that ballpark, perhaps, is futurist. So what's the difference between a futurist and transhumanist? Probably they overlap.
Yeah, definitely. Most transhumanists would be considered futurist. And as I understand it, futurist tends to be a person who is trying to kind of anticipate or predict or kind of scope out what the future might hold, right? They're trying to kind of anticipate or predict the future. And a transhumanist is distinct from that in that they're trying to create the future, right? So it's not just necessarily anticipating certain things that will happen or that might happen. It's actually trying to move certain kinds of ideas or certain kinds of projects forward. And so that's the real difference, is this passive versus active thing. And you see this play out in a lot of different places. So if we are getting together and articulating a vision of what the future should be and trying to get people to work towards that, then we're kind of transhumanist, or we're kind of in the transhumanist conversation at least.
Oh, fascinating. Fascinating indeed. And I noticed that both of us were in glasses, and in a real sense, that is a piece of technology.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's affecting the way we see, literally. And so it's in that sense, transforming our human ability, although we don't call it transhumanism, we just call it glasses.
Right. We typically stop talking about transhumanism and cyborgs and so forth as soon as we get comfortable with them. Right. So we're if you think about what a cyborg is, it's just a biological organism which has technology kind of integrated into its way of life. Right. And so, like you said, every one of us who wears glasses or contacts or anything like that, if we have pacemakers, whatever, we typically only say cyborg when we're talking about something we find aesthetically, ugly or something like that, right? But we've figured out how to make. Although I got made fun of for wearing glasses when I was a kid, most of us think that glasses are an okay thing for humans to wear, and so we don't think of that as cyborgs. But that's what we are, right? We've been augmenting ourselves with this kind of technology since the very beginning.
Wow, that's a bit mind-bending, and I want our audience to keep up with this conversation and not accelerate too fast to lose too many of them. But that's a helpful analogy, because we're comfortable with glasses, and the technologies are upon us, and several other of our summit speakers are talking about virtual reality, artificial intelligence, and potentially embedded technology that can help us understand the Bible. So what are your initial thoughts about how technology could give people, humans, a better understanding of the Bible?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there's a couple different ways that that's going to play out. One of them is we've just what we've seen in the with the internet and so forth over the last several decades, which is that we now have access to so much more information, right? I grew up with rotary dial phones, right? And anytime we wanted to know really what the state of the art scholarly work on a particular verse of the Bible was, or something like that, there was virtually no way to find it. You would have to go to some remote university, do incredible amount of research. And now we have access to all this kind of stuff, very almost too much access, right? This is our problem now. So that's one way. Technology will increasingly give us access to the resources to help understand what the Bible is, its context, its language, its idioms, and we can compare and contrast with how other people have interpreted it over time, so we can learn how to better do that. And so I think that's one big thing. Another thing is that just thinking about technology really helps, I think, shine a light onto ancient biblical stories, and helps us think about them in new ways that maybe we wouldn't be able to. And so I can give examples, but this whole idea of, we've been doing glasses, we've been making clothes, we've been building fires for our whole history. I think understanding where technology fits into that and helps us to understand it, really helps us to understand what it means to be a human made in the image of God. And I think the Bible really kind of brings a lot of that to light.
Yeah, very much. Bible. I mean, as followers of Christ, we believe the Bible to be the lens of truth as we look at life, and then as we look and understand who we are as humans in relation with each other, and also in relationship with God. But we, I think as a community, we tend to be slow about how to engage technology, particularly developing technologies.
Yeah.
And so we still treat the Bible as a printed text,
right?
As we're in a audio visual world, and then now we have technology enhancing every other aspect of our life, but not the Bible yet.
Right.
So,
well, this is a real critical thing to think about. The early Christians were huge adopters of technology. You think about what the Bible actually is, right? It's a book, it's a codex, it's not a scroll. And that shift to adopt a portable technology that could be hyperlinked, if you think about like what verse references are, right? It's a very early form of being able to reference things in a way that we've only gotten now with the web, right? And so Christians saw the potential of these things and understood that it was part of the Christian calling in terms of communicating that to the world, to adopt and use these technologies for good. And I think we really need to keep that in mind as we kind of jump into this rapidly changing future. We need to really understand what our heritage actually is and what we're actually looking at when we look at the printed Bibles on our shelves.
Yeah, and so as we move from print to digital, digital is not only a distribution media where we can get the Bible text into wide distribution, put it in our pocket with the Bible app and whatever app, and translate it into 7,000 languages. But what else can technology bring? I mean, we've got these new technologies. What do you see as some of the next steps, opportunity that can help Bible? I think you alluded to it already in terms of understanding the context and the history. What are some of the emerging technologies that you see the Bible could be or should be adopted into?
That's so there's the you mentioned the apps and so forth, and so it makes me think of like the Jewish instruction to kind of write the words of the Lord on the doorposts and all this kind of stuff. And there's I think there's ways of making our experience of the biblical stories, of the biblical text, of all these things much more immersive than we've treated them in the past. And so we're right now I see a lot of people we're asking questions about like, what do we do with the coronavirus and so forth, and so they're trying to move towards like less gatherings, less public spaces. So and this requires us to think about what we've been doing, and in a lot of ways we use sermons. It's just kind of a broadcast medium, right? But the internet is a networking medium. It's a connecting medium, and so we need to think about how we move our sermons and our Bible stories and so forth from just a broadcast model to this fully immersive, connective, integrated model that can truly kind of live in our environments, and that could involve, virtual spaces. It could involve all these things. I think we're going back to, ancient church traditions in many cases. You see the, which there's a lot of debate around it, but the Eastern Orthodox and the Catholics have these icons and all these kinds of ways of trying to point people to God by essentially constructing a virtual space that is a Bible story.
Whoa.
And so I think we have the opportunity to build the cathedrals of the future in virtual space right now, where people can actually step inside biblical stories, biblical ideas, and they can experience it in an emotional, deep way that maybe we've kind of let lay fallow for a while.
Fascinating. That's a fascinating thought. I'm not sure how to respond to that, but I'm just enamored.
Yeah. Well, I think there's so much there, but it really does take us like reorienting like what we think we're doing and where. And so one of the things I think we get hung up on this idea that you know, online is not real and offline is real or something like this. And we have these words like virtual and so forth. And I think that's a little bit of, it's misleading, and it leads us down a path of missing some opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And because, you know, as we all know, like connecting with people, you know, like I connect with my grandmother,
Mm-hmm.
you know, she kind of lives several hours away. I wouldn't be able to have as nearly as many connections with her as I do now. It's a different kind of connection. It's not a replacement for one or the other, but it's something different that we're bringing into the world. And so we should be thinking about how to not contrast those two things, but recognize them both as part of kind of the goodness of creation, that the kind of potential that God has put in the world.
Okay, potential wise, that's where I was trying to find words for. And so I think with our current and emerging technology, it opens the opportunity for us to connect with each other beyond geography, just as the printed text allows us to connect with the body of Christ in the past. I mean, we're interacting with the thoughts of the apostles and disciples from 2,000 years ago. And the Spirit of God breathed life into those words. And what I've heard so far as I prepared for this conversation with you is that in the transhumanist community, they're facilitating conversations about technology for the humanity of future. And perhaps in the same way, technology should be facilitating communication and community virtually for us to be interacting as the body of Christ in the global sense, not only in the local sense. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's absolutely true. I think one thing I think of is it's almost like a crisis, because we now live in a world where we are in some sense forced to engage, right? Where, you know, news spreads very quickly, ideas spread very quickly. You know, the idea that my family member might have tomorrow might be, you know, like might be radically different than what they had today, because they saw something that in the past it would have taken years to you know, kind of percolate through the world. And so we are experiencing a lot of tensions in our society because we don't know how to deal with this kind of radical connection. And I actually think, you know, this is something that, I mean, Christianity has talked about how difficult and what the challenges of dealing with that kind of connection for thousands of years. You know, Paul's metaphor of the body of Christ is itself this idea of like, okay, what does it look like to be this vastly larger group of people who are integrating and interacting in a new way? And I think there are a lot of resources in the Christian story in the Bible that help us to understand how to navigate those things. And the world is like desperately looking for answers of how do you coordinate and cooperate in this kind of an environment. And I think it's up to us to help them tease that out, because I don't think people are doing a very good job of that so far.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you. And as we wrap up, I just wanted to kind of ask for your closing thoughts on the topic of our conversation. So as a transhumanist, what do you see are the important questions or topics that we need to explore further at the intersection of Bible and technology?
Yeah, absolutely. The biggest thing I think for Christians is to think about what it means to be made in the image of God. And you know, this goes, for me, the whole biblical story, you know, is grounded in Genesis 1. God is a creator. He creates and categorizes and names creation, and then says, okay, I'm going to make a being like myself and give it the same job. And so you see God kind of leading humanity by the hand to tend and cultivate the life of the world, right? To name and categorize creation, all these kinds of things. And I think that's where we have to start. That's the biblical view of what technology is. And it's an outgrowth of being made in the image of God as creative people. And I think that's where we really need to spend a lot more time thinking about that. We need to spend a lot more time thinking about how God has used technology in the story of redemption. You can look at the story of Noah's Ark, right? The largest technological artifact the ancient world could have imagined. God calls Noah to create this so that all life can be saved. And you see this again in the tabernacle. God puts his spirit in people so that they can be blessed to build technologies. And I think, so this is the thing we need to think about. If technology comes out of our role as being the image of God, and then what is it we're called to use technology to do? And the first thing I think we're called to use technology to do in the Bible is to create and cultivate life, right? To bring life to the world, to help it flourish. That's something we really need to think about. And we need to think about it not just in terms of some of the ways it's currently discussed, like environmentalism, not polluting and so forth, but actually what's our active role? And that's going to be a huge question as we look at biotechnology, genetic engineering, all those things, because I think what we're going to have to say is, okay, God gave us this power. How do we use it for what God called us to do and not for something that's evil or destructive?
Brilliant. Well, thank you for capturing those thoughts. Really appreciate you leading a group of fellow believers into this conversation. It's very critical for the future of humanity. Thank you for joining us on the Future.Bible 316 online summit. If someone want to reach out to you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, so you can find our community at christiantranshumanism.org. I'm on Twitter and Facebook. We have a community on Facebook there, but you can also reach out to me. Yeah, just on Twitter. Micah T. Redding is great, and I'm always happy to discuss this stuff in any way that we can. So,
thank you, Micah. And we return you back to the Future.Bible online summit.
Well, I don't know about you. I need someone to talk to about this because there's a lot of things that are just rattling in my head. The creative juices are flowing. A lot of things to process and think about. I'd love to do that with you. I know DJ would too, and there's others in our community. Let's do that on social media. Why don't you hop online and use the hashtag Future.Bible, spell out D-O-T, Future D-O-T Bible, and use the hashtag to start the conversation about what Micah has talked about or any of the other topics that we have here today. And we might even go deeper with Micah or others on our podcast. So let us know what you think. Let us know if you want to hear more. And let us know what you're thinking, what resonated with you. What are the questions that are in your mind? What are the things that you're cheering for? We want to hear all that in our conversations on social media. Okay, we're going to get ready for the next speaker. Just take a break, sit back, relax, and we'll be back in a moment.